I want to welcome AgileXRM to the podcast. I've known the people at AgileXRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for Dialogs on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope today's guest inspires and educates you on the possibilities of the Microsoft Power Platform. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Madrid in Spain. He's the product owner of AgileXRM. You can find him on Twitter at mdehkordi. Welcome to the show, Massoud Dehkordi.
Hi. How are you, Mark?
Good to have you on.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you on the show. And, you're a key sponsor of the show. And so I really want to take some time to understand the ISV solution you have in our market and what it means and really unpack it. I first met you from memory about 10 years ago. It must have been at a conference in...
that's right. Atlanta, was it?
Yeah, Atlanta. I think it was a conference in Atlanta. Yeah. And the company I was working for at the time was very interested in business process optimization and business process management. And we were doing a lot of work in that area of consulting. And so, of course, yours was the only product that I could see on the market that was native to Dynamics and, built with just Microsoft customers in mind. And so really that was the start of, our connection and over the years seeing your team and your product grow. But before we get started, I always like to find out what you people do when they are not working. So what do you do for food, family, and fun in Madrid, Spain?
So people do other things than work.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice to know. No, me too. I used to work quite a lot, too much in fact. But that was many years ago. Then when I found out that it affects your personal life, I decided to put a balance there, and since then I'm actually much happier.
Nice.
Anyway, my background, I'm an immigrant twice. So I started my life in Iran, where I was born. Then my parents migrated to the UK, so I was there 16 years in the UK, educated, and went through university and everything, and worked a few years there, and then moved to Spain. So I'm sort of divided between three countries and three cultures.
Wow.
Which is it's good because you learn from each culture the good things and the bad things, and you pick the best parts, obviously.
Yeah.
Now I live quite a few years now in Spain, so my family is Spanish and got a daughter and a son already grown up. And I actually came to Spain because I met my current now wife at that time, like many years ago. So I moved here for this reason. And I'm actually quite happy because actually the weather is much better than the UK, so that's a plus. Anyway, after settling down here, I was working the IBM UK, and then I moved to IBM Spain. I know that you have some things to do with IBM as well.
Yes,
right?
yes.
I've heard. So I'm an ex-IBMer. Then after that, a few years, moved out of IBM and from the Scientific Center in Madrid. And then moved to Lucent Technologies, which is an American company now. Alcatel acquired them. And then when they acquired them, I actually left and went to Siebel. Siebel, at that time, were the number one CRM provider, software provider. And then Oracle purchased them, so I left. I don't like companies when they acquire other companies, the culture changes. And although Siebel taught me a lot of things, first thing, my first contact with CRM, but it was a huge product, very complex to implement. Projects were like 100, 200 people to implement the CRM. It was like huge. And the company culture actually was very aggressive. I was doing like 68 hours average per week. It was like no other life, just work. And I left because a heart surgeon told me either you change your job or you die. That was good enough for me to actually say, okay, that's it. So then I set up with some other people a company to implement Siebel projects in, top Fortune 500 companies. And that went quite well in a few years. And then after that, I had enough resources to actually start my own company with co-founding it with my partner, which is the current one, back in 2006. Now, a few years have gone by since then. And that's where we developed, our current product, but not from day one. It sort of grew.
So at what point did you cross paths in with Microsoft and Dynamics CRM, as it was called back in the day?
Well, that was sort of by chance. When we set up our company, we had a BPM engine. It was generic BPM engine. The engine was done in .NET, so that was the, let's say, connection to Microsoft. But we had no connection to CRM at that time. And then one day, right at the first 3 months we were set up in Spain, we got a call and we got invited to a public tender to the highest Spanish court for a public tender. And we said, how did they find us? And they said, from your website. And they're inviting all BPM providers to a public tender. They wanted to make sure everybody has the same chance. We entered this public tender thing. Everybody was there. We were vendor number 26. So there's 25 other competitors. Wow. Everybody who was anybody at that time was there. The problem is we were the last one. So they gave us a slot to do our 1 hour demo. And that slot was 4 p.m. on a Friday. And all week they've been watching people present. Wow. Imagine the atmosphere when you arrived there. They were just fed up watching people doing PowerPoints. So we arrived there. They sort of warned us we have 60 minutes, not 61 minutes. So they want to go home. It's Friday afternoon. And when we showed what we had, we didn't do our standard demo. We picked up one of the main processes that this court uses. It's written in law, and we modeled it in a process. And we modeled it and we presented it the same, that's something that they recognize and everything. And we actually, it blew their mind. To cut the story short, we got through the second stage 2 and stage 3, and then we were in the last 7 with huge companies at that time. I don't want to name them because they lost. And they put all us in the same room at the same meeting, and they gave us a 50-page document with like 230 functional points that we had to prove that we can cover. We had 2 weeks to do it, to do a POC, all of us. And we looked at the document and we only covered half the stuff. The other half, CRM would cover. Okay, they needed all the stuff that CRM was doing. So it just something clicked. They said, okay, if we combine in these 2 weeks in the POC, both CRM and the BPM engine, we can cover this functionality, which is exactly what happened. We covered everything. We covered every single functional point, and we won, to the surprise of absolutely anybody else, because nobody had heard of us. In fact, they would ask, who are you? And that put us on the map. The product wasn't born at that time because it was a project. We had to actually then implement this because, POC, obviously, it's all done quickly and it's not good enough. But then in the next year and a half, we actually integrated the two technologies together. And, we saw that we can actually productize this, make it a product. And the next few years were actually, creating with a product out of it. That CRM was CRM 3.0, so we're talking quite a while back.
Yeah.
So when CRM 4 came in 2011, etc., so the rest of the story everybody knows. And the name was XRM because, the concept of XRM came up. And we said, okay, what name do we give it? Agile was because you very quickly could create things, so Agile plus XRM. And then Microsoft changed the names 20 times instead, but we stuck with XRM.
Good.
Just like XRM Toolbox. So you can't change the XRM part. And so, that's how this thing started.
This is amazing. That depth and what you're able to do. And that's what I like. I like that the tool is so visual in how you can lay out. Just phenomenal. Tell me a bit about, what are the common use cases you are seeing now? Now, you obviously from that point, you built a company around it and you productize what you have. And that product's been in market now over 10 years. Tell me about the typical workloads, or actually, let's start with the type of organizations that acquire your product. You know, I work in the Australian market. I know one of the top 4 banks have implemented AgileXRM around a lot of their, and they're using Power Automate as well, which is interesting, right? So the two obviously play well together. And I noticed that, you know, you mentioned there are courts, you know, which are often, you know, have, you know, very detailed processes, as you say, that are written in law. A bank is very similar. They have compliance rules that are written in law. If they're not compliant, the bank will get sanctioned. Tell me, tell me about the type of organizations that you typically find have the requirement for a business process management tool, typically.
Well, the answer actually to that question is, you know, which companies can use, let's say, Dynamics or Power Automate, Power Platform, you know, Dataverse, etc. It's everyone. Everybody, you know, has some use of it. Now, the depth of use, the depth of complexity is where, you know, I think where we come in. Because the out-of-the-box components of the Power Platform, or, you know, Power Automate, you know, Power BI, Virtual Agent, etc., Dataverse, they give you enough tools to create many types of applications. But the moment those requirements are more complex, the moment, you know, the users ask for things that, you know, you hadn't thought about, you start over-customizing your platform, okay? And then when you get to trouble. Now, with AgileXRM actually avoids all of that. So with AgileXRM, we work hand in hand with Power Automate, for instance, because Power Automate, what we call system automation, okay? So it's bits of workflow that, you know, automation that you do between apps and services, you automate that. These are system automation. But the business process, end-to-end business process, is more than just bits of automation. It's in between. There are human tasks, decisions, all sorts of, you know, information that has to be shown to users to take decisions on those. And there's a lot of back and forth. Workflow, by definition, is all forward. You know, next, with some branching. But business processes, they go back and forth. Sometimes you go back to step 2 in the process because that's how your business process is. Now, the freedom of drawing your arrows from any box to any other box anywhere in the process is what, you know, BPM allows you to do, our BPM at least. And also there's the M in the BPM, that's management. So, you know, once you've done your, let's say, automation, you kick it off. What happens if in the middle, and I'm assuming that, you know, sometimes the process should, you know, like in a court of law, it could take years to complete. First of all, can it handle years of, you know, being up and running? That's the first thing. And if it does, what if in the middle things change? Sometimes it change, and you have to be able to adapt that running process to a new definition, to a new set of rules. So BPM has to allow the management of things that are already running, not just kick things off. So, and, you know, hanging all this together, being able to present it to the users in a understandable way, that's what the power of, you know, our BPM at least comes. Because some BPM, there are many other BPM products in the market, but none of them, you know, are designed, first of all, for Power Platform or Dynamics. And secondly, they force the users or the companies to maintain 2 repositories of everything, meaning your data structure, you have to use Dataverse plus theirs. You have to, you know, task list, they have to have activities in CRM Dataverse, and then you have activities in their system. Or security. I have my own set of security stuff, and Dataverse has its own. What we've done, we've, you know, unified this to just Dataverse is or which is underneath Dynamics also. That's the unique and unified repository of everything. So it's natural. It's just like a plugin component embedded inside, and then you can show it to the users. And they have these management capabilities directly from inside. You don't go to another product. You don't go to another portal. You don't log in to anywhere else. It's all inside Dynamics.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So I can see then, you know, when you talk about the management of a process, and I just think of banking, and you might go through a home loan application, which has many branching steps. It involves many parties. And as you say, part of it's non-compliant. You might have to go back to another step in the process. Or even I think of loan automation. You know, the interest rate changes on a loan. So therefore, even though that loan might have another 5, 10, 15 years to run, it needs to be recalculate it and go through a process again. But it's not like that you stop the automation and kick off a new automation. It has to stay in flight. So adapt to it. So obviously it works well in banking. Obviously it works well in a courts or a legal structure. Are you seeing it in other government agencies?
Well, government agencies and other places. I've got a few examples of our current main clients. There's, for instance, a Dutch utility company. They've been a customer since 2015. They use it for the core order to delivery to cash processes, okay? Which may be possible to do with other technologies or out-of-the-box technologies. But it's the making everything implicit. Your business processes become implicit. That's very important. So they're not implicit, they become explicit. Rather than it's underneath, somebody has coded what's going to happen next. You see where you are in the process, and then you can actually take action if you want to change something. So making everything explicit. So what you see is what you get, type of thing. What you model, the process you model, is what you see at runtime, and what you take action upon on runtime, and all within, as I said, Dynamics or Dataverse. So, for instance, this Dutch company, there are highest volume of executions of processes. They run 15 million processes per month.
Wow.
Okay, so we're talking major numbers. Now, AgileXRM, when it was first created, didn't think about this kind of volumes. Obviously, we were thinking of much smaller things, but we grew into this. So these companies started, these clients started to ask for this kind of performance, and the product built up with real requirements, with real use cases in real world scenarios. So when you talked about the Australian bank, they're a recent customer. They're like 18 months ago. They actually manage what they call business functions, many hundreds of business functions with AgileXRM. We got another bank. They are the biggest one of the biggest Dynamics 365 online customers in the world. Okay, and they're doing their phone banking processes, all integrated with their CTI, contact center, etc. We also, one of our most famous clients is a famous Spanish football club, soccer, for our American friends.
Yes.
Where one of the best players in the world used to play. And they handle, for instance, all the memberships of all the members of the club. And soon they're opening it up to their website as a self-service. So, for instance, our product allows you to expand and extend the use of the product to external users, even anonymous users. Okay, so the sort of thing that is more difficult with out of the box. Yeah, you still you need to open up things. Is harder. We have health insurance companies. For instance, one of them is managing all the interactions with all the customers through their multi-channel contact center and branches. They have branches and contact center, and every time a customer goes in or phones, everything goes through the dialogs and processes that we manage, both for front office and back office processes. And our very recent win, it was like last week, is an Irish government agency. This was a hectic 2-year public tender.
Wow.
We had to do pilots, POCs, 500-page RFPs, and prove everything. This is like, and that one, the idea is to implement in a fully digital transformation of this organization and a base for other Irish government agencies. So it's the first. That's why the evaluation was so concise. And that's for all their external, internal processes with citizens, with providers.
Wow.
So that's a huge project. That's going to be starting very soon. So it's, any company, but as you notice, they all have one thing in common is they're not little things. They're all big projects. And, it doesn't mean you can't start small and actually prove to yourself that this thing works. For that, we've actually, later on I'll talk about it, we're going to give away 25 user license for free forever, what we call a community edition.
Nice.
So people can,
get up to speed on it.
Get up to speed, have a look,
yep.
Make sure, they can actually prove it to themselves, and internally sometimes you have to make an internal sale within your organization to prove, hey, we're going to need this because look what we've done with it.
Yeah.
So with no cost.
It's good. It's good. Listen, tell me when people come to you and they say, and it's interesting because I'm going to talk about Power Automate and then AgileXRM from a business process management point of view. And Steven Siciliano, who heads up Power Automate inside Microsoft, I asked him this question on a podcast some time ago. I said, is Power Automate a BPM tool? And he goes, no, it's definitely not. And you talked about automating systems and connections and things. How do you explain the difference between Power Automate and business process management?
Well, that's actually quite interesting that now Microsoft says no, because until recently, let's say, they always said that, you can do BPM with out of the box. So at the beginning we had, Workflow Foundation. You can use that to set, to create your BPM.
But it's not BPM,
but at least now,
it's automation, right?
Yeah,
as in
exactly.
Windows Workflow Foundation. Yes, you could automate things, but I would never have considered it a BPM.
Yeah, but the messaging, let's say, marketing people, let's say, at least, I wouldn't say the technical people, marketing people did confuse the market, saying, why do I need a BPM product? Because I already can do it, build it with all the out-of-the-box stuff. Now I think they're being much more transparent about it, and, it does what it does very well. We've bet our lives and livelihoods and businesses on the hands, and we add value to where we think value is needed. When it's not needed, you don't need our product. When it's needed, we can help. And so what can you do with Power Automate, and what can you do with AgileXRM? Power Automate is the flows that you create, which has two parts to it. There's the desktop automation and there's the cloud flows.
Yes.
The RPA is obviously clear. RPA is what it is. It simulates what the user would have done, and we don't compete or anything anyway with that. In some clients, they definitely need RPA because the systems that they have, they're legacy. There's no way to do API with that, or they're moving things around that it's just manual, and RPA just comes in perfect with that. And the flow part, they have 615 or something like connectors to other systems. We don't pretend to compete with that in any way. So connect different systems of together is perfect. Now, but connecting systems and moving data around them is not the same as end-to-end business process.
Yeah.
For me, the end-to-end business process has to be something that a business user understands. Now, if you put a flow that you've done, a cloud flow, definition that is on the screen, and you somehow get that on paper and put it in front of a business user, would they understand it? That's the first question. Probably not, because it's too technical or it's too sequential. This all goes down. And when you branch, you open another box, and in the box you have another box, and in the box you have another box. And that is not understandable. What do they understand? Usually Visio diagrams. You draw a Visio diagram, you have a start point, first step, then this goes to here, then to the other person, then you have your swim lanes. You say, you go to this department, that department, the different functions, and the business user says, oh, okay, I understand that. I want this implemented. What happens? People take that Visio diagram and try to interpret it and implement it with some tools that they have. When is the next time the business user going to see that diagram? Probably never. Yeah. Now, what we've done is we said, okay, what's the best tool to model your business processes? Well, we think it's Visio, Microsoft Visio, there's no doubt. So we've extended Microsoft Visio so that not only you model that business user understandable process, you actually configure it also from there.
Wow.
Okay. Low code, no code. Actually, mostly no code. But anyway, there are possibilities to add code sometimes when it's necessary. And anyway, so you get that diagram, everybody understands it. And when you model it and you execute it, you see it again at execution time within Dynamics Dataverse. You see it again, where you are in the process, who has the task, where is it stuck, or where it errored out for whatever, because you made some call, some system, and you have to fix it. Everything is what we call WYSIWYG.
Yeah.
What you got, what you see, what you get. There's no interpretation, and it's all in your face. So there are other things that are important. Is we said the management part is how the people obviously have the permissions can go to that diagram, and with the clicks they can actually take action. Like maybe you want to suspend or resume a process, for whatever reason. With your SLAs being correctly calculated, then maybe you want to jump from one step to another. Sometimes it happens. The boss calls and says, for this particular client, forget about these steps in the middle. For this client, go directly to that step. You can actually jump in the process to that step. Or, as I said, the conditions change, the requirements change, and you want to be able to migrate that process to a different version, and it's running. Okay, our product allows you to do that. So that's these are the kind of things that BPM allows you to do that obviously you won't get. Versioning, we talked about. Versioning is very important. You have a version of a process, maybe from, especially in course of in legal stuff, a law may apply from a certain date.
Yes.
So, but anything that started before that date should follow the old law. So you can have different versions of the same process being executed at the same time.
Wow.
So
it's very good.
That's
tell me about. We've talked about business process management, and I was going to ask you, how do you visualize this? And you've talked about Microsoft Visio is the modeling visualization layer, and the connection into AgileXRM. Tell me, because I know another component, and back in past versions of Dynamics CRM, we used to have Dialogs. It was very rudimentary. It fitted a purpose, but they were phased out. But some organizations need a follow the bouncing ball dialogue for their staff. You talked about call centers, great example. But tell us about Dialogs, because that's another key component of AgileXRM.
Yeah, that's key, and it's actually unique. When we talked about other BPM products, none of them have this functionality of Dialogs. Dialogs, for those who maybe were not familiar with the deprecated CRM function, Dialogs, was a set of questions and answers that you could, configure. You say, okay, I put a question in front of the user and possible answers, and based on the answer, then I, go to the next question or take some action in CRM and that's what it used to do. And for simple things, it was very, very useful. Now, Dialogs to be able to be usable by anyone, not just users inside the company, also people outside the company, and also not only using data from CRM or Dataverse, but also extended to data outside, because data usually comes up from many systems. Then Dialogs allows you to, using that Visio, again, create pages. So each page can have multiple controls and logic in them. And based on the answers, then you go to the next page, and in between you can have any set of actions or system steps that do things or, update things, read things, etc., etc. So the Azure Dialogs has to be seen to be believed, because it's extremely powerful, and we would like to be able to prove it to people by our what we call a free POC that we offer on our website. So people can fill one of our dialogues online, and so it's like a qualification dialogue, and then we contact them and we build for them process and a dialogue to actually see what that means for them. So dialogues are very, very important component that is included in the product.
Yeah, I definitely know. And I particularly comes to mind a project that I was on at a university, and we needed to update multiple tables in Dataverse. We'll call it Dataverse because of the current name. And that meant they had to open up multiple records, right, to do this process. And by putting the dialogue layer over the top, the user capturing the data had the single user experience, and of course behind the scenes it updated all the areas that needed that. So it's so important. Just in you've mentioned that people can go and experience this. We're going to get all those links and put them in the show notes so people can just click through. You can check them out now in the show notes. They'll be there for you. But where can people find out more information about AgileXRM?
Again, on our site. At the end, we've tried to create a product which is simple to understand and simple to use. Okay, because the whole idea of extending the capabilities of creating apps to the citizen developer, which is one of the main objectives of the Power Platform, we feel that we add huge value in that aspect, meaning that not maybe everybody is savvy enough to do a Power Automate, for instance. It's you still have to understand a bit of techno stuff, and now we've simplified our let's say developer, or what we call a modular experience, so that people with less technical knowledge can also create amazing apps.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you're not going to need in a major project technical people. Somebody has to do your data modeling. Somebody has to define your security. If you citizen developers usually don't care about those parts, but those are very important parts that make things work. But at least very quickly we can create things and put it in the hands of the business, or what we call a citizen developer, and they can maintain it. That is also important. One of your other podcasts, I heard that the waterfall world of doing things is gone, or at least it should have disappeared, and everybody wants to quick results, put it in front of users, get feedback and change it, and very quickly get to a workable app and see results from very early on, not wait 2 years to get something that probably is out of date by the time you get it. So yes, we think we enable more people to become productive in the low-code world.
I like it. Just as we wrap up, you mentioned a community edition of AgileXRM. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, competition is a fully functional product. Is fully functional. It's limited in two ways. Obviously, you have to limit it, giving it away for free.
Yes,
it's 25 users. Okay, so up to 25 users is free, and then it's a single server. Meaning that you want high availability, then you have to purchase the product.
Yes.
Or you want, because we have different types of licensing, like core-based licensing, named user licensing, or consumption licensing. Those kind of licensing, depending on the size and the usage of your processes, could be one of the other licensing type. But you can move very easily and quite economically from the community edition to any of these licensing options.
Excellent.
Whenever we've gone into a competition with other people, we've never lost on price. Let's put it this way. We are very, very economic because, as I say, we want this thing to be extended. Yes. It's true that until this year, we've been quite a few years in business. We haven't done any marketing except, those events that we went to in the US where we met. And, we don't have a salesperson in the company. just to, it's been word of mouth. It's been, CIOs talking to each other. Every single customer has called us, and then we've come in or we've been invited to public tenders or etc. This year we've decided we want to get the word out. We want people to know this, and what better way to give away a version of product they can actually use.
I like it.
So
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure we include all the links in the show notes. Massoud, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so pleased that you're a supporter. I'm a big believer in this product, and I know that my organization intends to distribute to many of our customers that we feel need this level of business process management. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Stay safe out there and shoot for the stars.